Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and I don't know about you, but lately it seems like we all just kind of have less and less time to do something that we all love, and that is playing video games. I see this comment all the time in my videos where people are complaining they just don't have as much time as they would like, you know? All your time's taken up with your work and your career, your family, your relationships. Well, today I wanted to address that because we don't all have time to play these 50-hour, 100-hour games. Instead, we are looking for some great short games to play when you don't have a lot of time. So let's go ahead and get started. See, I even shortened down the intro for you. All right, let's get into the first one here. It is an absolute blast. This game is bonkers. It is called Pizza Tower. I've read that this game is inspired by Wario Land, and I can totally see that because it is this mix of high energy gameplay and it's got this momentum-based platforming that you don't see very often. I also really dig the hand-drawn kind of cartoon art style that's here. It's like really exaggerated. It's just completely over the top and it just has a ton of personality. It also kind of reminds me a little bit of Sonic the Hedgehog as well, because you know how in Sonic you have to really deal with momentum and you don't have to necessarily memorize the levels, but if you do, that will certainly help you get through them. And in addition to that, this also has this really cool combo system. You can see me trying to pull it off here. So again, the better at this game that you are, the more you're going to pull off these combos and just kind of the more fun you'll have. I also like how in each of these levels, once you collect all the pizza ingredients that you need, then you have to rush back to the beginning of the level. So you basically kind of play it in reverse, but with a timer. And so there's some pressure there. This is definitely a really cool game. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, and thankfully you can complete this game in about 5 to 6 hours. Next up is a game I want to talk about called Abzû, and I have to admit I didn't initially get this game when I first played it. I was in the wrong state of mind. I was looking for a fast-paced action kind of adventure game, and that is absolutely not what this game is. However, I have now played this game 3 times, and I think it's just absolutely breathtaking. As you see here, to start off with, this underwater world that this game has, it's just stunning with these vibrant colors and these really cool animations. Has these mesmerizing kind of lighting effects in here. It's just such a beautiful game to kind of wander through. And that's kind of what you do in this game. There is very little instruction. You're simply just trying to complete a level. And by complete, I'm doing quotes here, because really you can just kind of power through this game in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. However, it's really designed for you to take your time. Don't rush through this game. It's almost like a meditative experience here, especially if you've had a hard day or a stressful day at work and you want to come home and you just want to kind of chill out a little bit. This is the game for you. However, I'm not going to show anything in the second half of this game because it does get a little dark. It has a couple moments in this game in the second half when you start learning about the world and your place in it and kind of what you are, that it gets pretty interesting, I will say. This game has some, I don't know, it has some really interesting symbolism and kind of deep themes going on here. Also, it's worth noting that yes, you can just kind of fly through this game in about an hour or so. However, if you want to get all of those trophies, well, you're gonna have to really explore and try to find some of the hidden stuff throughout each level, and also do some really interesting tasks that you may not think to do. So again, if you're interested in this game and you're looking to make it a little bit longer, check out some of the trophies because that's going to give you an idea of maybe where to explore deeper in this game. I also want to say that the soundtrack in this game is one of those soundtracks that I will put on in the background while I'm working and not even playing the game. I just want it in the background. It reminds me of a Disney soundtrack. It's very symphonic. It's very, orchestral. It just, oh man, it basically enhances the game's kind of emotional depth and also that sense of wonder really well. And so as you can tell, I started as a skeptic of this game, but now I absolutely love it, especially if you're in that mood where you just want to chill out and you just want to just relax. Now, for something completely different, this is Horizon Chase 2. So you might remember that several years ago, gosh, probably 5 or 6 years ago, we did a couch co-op competition at my old game room with all the MJR crew playing the original game, and we had an absolute blast. Well, this is the sequel, and I feel like it doesn't get quite as much love as it should. Now, the good news is it's very much like the original game. As you can see here, it is a blisteringly fast arcade racing game in the style of Outrun or maybe Top Gear, some of those older games in the arcades or on consoles, but with some new graphics and also some new lighting and things like that. I think it looks really good. They have done a couple tweaks to the formula here, so no longer do you have to pick up gas. You essentially can't run out of gas in the sequel. That is a good thing. I definitely appreciate that. However, the nitro system has changed a little bit. Now you pick up fragments of nitro, which, I don't know, it's not necessarily that big of a deal, to be honest, but it is something to be aware of that they changed that a little bit. But the gameplay and the controls are very tight, very intense, as you see here. Like I said, you're just flying down these roads. The other kind of bummer about this game, and it's something you can kind of deal with, but especially on narrow roads, sometimes the computer-controlled cars are incredibly annoying. They'll literally just dive right into you to try to make you crash. They don't always do that, and if you're careful, you can definitely avoid that, but just keep in mind that sometimes the computer is not playing fair. They also added support for online races, which is really cool. I haven't actually tried that myself, but I can see me and Drunken Master Paul trying to do that. That'd be pretty fun. But it's always good to have an arcade racing game ready to go because most of these races only last maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, 3 tops. And again, you can unlock pretty much everything and beat this game in about 5 to 6 hours. All right, now we're checking out What Remains of Edith Finch, and you can beat this game in about 2 hours. However, unlike a lot of other walking simulators that you may have heard of, I think this is probably one of the better ones. In this game, you play as the last surviving member of the Finch family, and you return to your home to uncover all these kind of mysteries that involve your relatives. And what's really cool about this game is that each one of those is told through a pretty unique, I guess you would call it like a vignette. And so you explore the house, you find hidden rooms and some of these narratives that you might not expect. This game goes in some really wild places. And gradually, basically, you're just kind of piecing together, I guess, the curse of your family. You're trying to learn the history about it and how it got there and what happened to all your relatives. It's pretty wild. And again, each family member's story is told through this kind of unique and creative gameplay style. Every single chapter feels kind of fresh and meaningful. I also like the art style in this game. The house isn't empty. It's packed full of stuff, memories of people who live there. It's fun to explore. And like I said, you can beat this game in about 2 hours. However, if you wanted to find everything, you might want to tack on an extra hour there. But it definitely doesn't overstay its welcome.
It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. I reached out for her. And suddenly, I was a cat.
Switching over to something completely different, we're going to talk about a game called Downwell. This is a vertical roguelike action game where essentially you are this guy who jumps into this well and you are falling, constantly falling. And essentially what you are doing is you are jumping on many of the different creatures that are in this well, basically trying to get down as far as you possibly can. Now, that sounds simple, but there is thankfully a lot of extra stuff going on here, including, as you see from this footage here, you have these gun boots. So essentially you have the ability to shoot downward as you're falling. So it adds a bit of combat to this, as well as kind of the strategy to just surviving, but also unlocking gems and things like that. Also, there are a ton of upgrades and things that modify the gameplay in this, which keeps it really fun. So you'll dive into one of these little side caves here, and you never know what you're going to get. And each time you run, it's a little bit different, and there's just enough variety here to just keep it interesting. And like I said, this game has procedurally generated levels, so no two runs are the same. That keeps the game very fresh and rewarding because essentially you can jump in there and you never quite know what you're going to get. This is the type of game where I will jump in for 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, try to make some progress. But there are a lot of things to unlock in this game. So if you want, you can basically put in 5-6 hours to unlock everything and actually finish the game. That's typically how long it will take. So it's one of those unique games where you can kind of play it how you want, right? You can play it for just a couple minutes, or you can play it for a couple hours. So definitely check out Downwell. Next up is another game I've played, I think, at least 3 times. My wife has also played this game. That is called Stray. Stray is a fantastic game. It looks like it would be kind of like a walking simulator, but no, it's not actually. This is a very unique experience. As you see by this gameplay footage here, you play as a stray cat in this cyberpunk city. And essentially in the beginning of the game, you are separated from your friends. I think they're your friends or your family. I'm not entirely sure. But essentially the whole point of the game is to try to get back to them. And it is an epic experience. First of all, I want to say this game is just beautiful and super interesting to explore. What they built here is really cool because as you can see, it's kind of neon lit, maybe post-apocalyptic city. You're not entirely sure when or where this is taking place. But you quickly meet up with some robots that have their own AI consciousness and personalities. And that's the thing about this game is that it looks kind of cold and maybe depressing, but it's actually, there's a ton of heart in this game, and the characters that you meet in this are actually really cool. This is surprisingly emotional. I also want to mention that the platforming in this game, of which there is a lot of it, is really interesting because essentially it prompts you when you can jump. And I found that to be really cool because you couldn't really necessarily get yourself in trouble by falling off a ledge. Instead, you were kind of looking for the path the whole time, and the game does a good job kind of guiding you where you need to go. And that's not everything because there's a lot of puzzle solving in here. There's also some areas where there's stealth, and there's another section, or actually a couple sections in here where you just need to kind of run and survive. So it mixes it up very well. I love this game. Of course, I am a cat person, and I just found this to be absolutely charming. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's about 5 hours to play this game, maybe a little bit longer if you want to find everything. But yeah, I really love the game Stray. Like I said, I played it several times, and I'm kind of hoping that they do a sequel. That would be pretty cool. Next up, a game called A Short Hike. This game really surprised me. I really, really enjoyed this game quite a bit. I played it, geez, what was it? Probably 2 years ago now. I was on vacation. I was actually traveling through Oregon on a road trip, and I had brought a bunch of Switch games with me, and this was included in there. And so when we had some downtime, instead of just kind of watching, random television or whatever, I was playing this, and I really enjoyed it. This is an open world island that invites you to wander around. You'll do some climbing and some gliding around kind of at your own pace. It's very chill, very calm. But there is a story here, and it's fairly simple, but what's cool about it is that you'll make connections with the other people on the island to kind of help you get to where you need to go. And a lot of those characters that you'll meet are pretty quirky, but often they'll give you like a side quest, or maybe there'll be like a little fun little mini game that you can do. Like at one point you're doing some fishing and some racing, things like that. And as you see by the footage here, the graphic style of this game is pretty cool. It definitely reminds me of, like, say, a PlayStation 1 game. And I absolutely love that. It's full 3D, but it's got that kind of low pixelated look to it. So again, very nostalgic, very cool. And you can complete this game in about 2 hours. Again, maybe a little bit longer if you try to find everything on the island. And so there you go, guys. That is a look at some really great short games that you can play if you don't have a ton of time. And before I end this, I want to shout out a website called howlongtobeat.com. I use this all the time. Essentially what you can do is type in the name of pretty much any game that's ever been made, and it'll tell you how long it takes to beat that game. Which is cool because it'll tell you, it's like, okay, it normally would take, maybe 5 hours, but then if you wanted to complete it and get everything, it'll say, 6-7 hours or whatever. It's very cool. It's a great resource for people who are looking, for games that are not going to take you forever to finish. But I know this is just the tip of the iceberg of games that are great to play, that are not very long. Let me know which ones you recommend down in the comments below. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.